26.9 was absolutely jam-packed with meta-shifting changes, so we've got a ton to update you guys on in today's video, as we'll break down all the new meta trends along with an update to the solo queue tier list for every single role. From hard-stuck players finally escaping elo hell, to gold, platinum, and emerald players reaching their dream rank of diamond, to diamond players finally breaking into masters for the very first time. Every single day, countless SkillCapped members are hitting ranks they never thought possible. There's a reason we've been doing this for over a decade. We know exactly what it takes for you to climb. And it all starts with our Season 16 Essentials courses for every role. Each course is designed to walk you through every stage of the game from start to finish. From learning the exact trading and recall timers you need to win in lane, to the mid-game decisions 99% of players get completely wrong, all the way to the team fighting tips and tricks challengers abuse to always deal the highest damage possible. Every course tailor-made to focus only on the concepts that actually matter for climbing and carrying on your role. And that's only the start. Take our brand new Season 16 macro and wave control courses with perfect 5-star reviews that one customer even said made his entire yearly subscription completely worthwhile. Weekly challenger updates where our experts walk you through exactly how to carry in your elo on your chosen champion, or even our world record jungle clears for every meta champion with the exact routes, tips, and tricks our subscribers are abusing to clear faster than ever before. If you're feeling stuck this season and you can't rank up no matter how hard you try, SkillCapped is the solution for you. As if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, you get every penny back. Check it all out today using the exclusive discount in the description or pinned comment below. And with that being said, let's get into the video. So it turned out that Deathfire Touch landed in a really powerful spot, and Riot has already gone ahead and hotfix nerfed it. They have reduced the bonus AD scaling from 8 to 7% and lowered the AP ratio from 3 to 2.5%. You also no longer gain 100% increased damage after 3 seconds, and instead now gain 75% increased damage. So a pretty decent nerf overall, but the champs who were overperforming with the rune are very unlikely to swap off from taking it. DFT should still be in a great spot, just not as OP as it was to start the patch. If you're unsure as to who you should be running Deathfire Touch on right now, here is a list of champions: Brand, Malzahar, Singed, Aurelion Sol, Victor, Rumble, Gangplank, Karthus, Smolder, Swain, Cassiopeia, Vladimir, Anivia, Ryze, Ziggs, Azir, and Senna support. More on Smolder and Senna later on in the video, as they have a very specific setup that you need to be running. So one of the bigger winners up in the top lane who has a new build that you can play for 26.9 is Teemo. We noted in the pre-patch tier list to watch out for Shiv on Teemo, and so far the analytics behind the item on him are really powerful. Shiv has become Teemo's most popular rush item, and it's outperforming Nashor's Tooth Rush by about 3% win rate. Shiv is your rush so that you have that additional wave clear, which feels so nice on Teemo since he can now push waves a lot quicker. After building static Shiv, there are a few different second and third item options that you can tinker with. Liandry's or Dusk and Dawn both look like really good second pickups on Teemo. Dusk and Dawn is going to be a bit stronger if you're looking to side lane and duel your opponent in the 1v1, while Liandry's offers up a bit more teamfight potential and strength for your shrooms. So if you're intent on split pushing with Teemo and being a menace in the side lane, go for Dusk and Dawn second, but if your team is ahead and you can just group up and control objectives with your shrooms, grab Liandry's. Third item will depend on what you picked up second. If you went Dusk and Dawn second, then you go into Liandry's third, and if you went Liandry's second, then Malignant's third works great. Now you do still want to go press the attack for your keystone on Teemo. Some Teemo players have been experimenting with Deathfire Touch, and understandably so, but PTA is outperforming by quite a wide margin while also holding the higher play rate. So it's pretty clear that press the attack is still the best keystone for Teemo. So overall, Teemo is in a really powerful spot after the rework of Static Shiv and the fact that he got directly buffed. So we'll be moving him into the OP tier for 26.9. So for the top lane tier list in 26.9, a few champs who have become noticeably stronger due to the item and rune changes include Teemo, Singed, Gangplank, and Olaf, while Warwick was directly buffed and is looking a lot better. The crazy thing is that besides Teemo, we already had all those champions rated in the S tier prior to this patch, so champs that were already good have become even better. Kayle is still a great pick for this patch despite the Dusk and Dawn changes, as she actually likes a static Shiv rush now. Shiv into Nashor's Tooth is the build performing the best on Kayle for this patch, so she's back up in the OP tier for top lane. It's still early on, so it's tough to say definitively, but it's definitely looking like AD Kennen is not a thing after the buffs Riot gave him. Some players have been trying out a Shiv rush, but it's not performing nearly as well as AP, so at best it's a niche build that you could pull out, but not optimal by any means. AP Xin Zhao is a pick that has been gaining some traction this patch, and rightfully so after Riot mega buffed his AP ratios. So far, we are seeing a Shiv rush perform quite well on the champ, but some players are just completely bypassing Shiv and taking Dusk and Dawn rush, so it'll probably take a little more time until we know for sure what's the most optimal setup for him. Not a champ who's overly powerful, but something worth considering for 26.9, as we're placing AP Xin Zhao top lane in the B tier. So moving on to jungle now, an outlier who has been performing incredibly well to start the patch is Rek'Sai, and this is partly due to the fact that Rek'Sai now now has Hail of Blades as a rune option she can take in place of Conqueror. Conqueror is by no means bad on Rek'Sai now, but Hail of Blades is going to offer up stronger upfront burst potential, so if you're either playing into a very squishy enemy comp, or if you have lanes with really strong gank setup to where you think you'll be able to easily snowball early on, you should consider going Hail of Blades instead of Conqueror. Riot changed Hail of Blades this patch so that it now actually deals true damage, so it amps the early game gank power of Rek'Sai. Overall, Rek'Sai is one of the better junglers that you can play for 26.9, and we've got her placed up in the S tier. Moving up into the jungle OP tier for mid-patch, as he's been absolutely excelling after his 26.9 buff, is Warwick. So Riot decided to slap on some extra damage to Warwick's passive, and this change has led to his win rate jumping by around 2%. It makes sense that a buff like this turns out super impactful, because Warwick's passive damage going up just means his auto attacks are dealing more damage, which means when you're skirmishing with the champ, you've got guaranteed higher damage output than before. The new boots Gluttonous Greaves also look to have some viability on Warwick as well. It's too early to tell whether you should be taking them in every single game, but definitely something you should experiment with in 26.9. So one thing we were spot on with predicting in the pre-patch tier list was that Storm Raider's Surge is relatively weak so far and is definitely no longer a good option on Nunu. Nunu players going for Storm Raiders are being completely outclassed by those taking Aftershock instead. Aftershock is just the more reliable keystone option on Nunu for the time being, as it's got upwards of a 53% win rate, while Storm Raider's Surge sits down at only 49%. So even though Nunu has been able to swap over to Aftershock, we do still feel that without Phase Rush, he is in a slightly weaker state than he was before, so we'll be keeping him in the A tier for 26.9. So one of the changes that we were wrong about in our pre-patch prediction was where Shyvana would land after her fixes. On paper, and from the testing we did on PBE, it seemed like Shyvana was going to get weaker for this patch, but that has definitely not been the case. Maybe the changes weren't added correctly to the PBE when we were testing, because it did look like her Q was just getting weaker, but it could also have just been that the base stat W and E changes were positive enough to outweigh the Q nerfs. Regardless, Shyvana has seen her win rate jump up by a bit over 1% for 26.9, so she is most definitely in a really powerful spot right now. There's a new build to watch out for on Shyvana this patch, and it consists of a Trinity Force Rush. It's Trinity, Spear of Shojin, and Death's Dance is the core, so you're going to be quite a bit more durable than if you went for the Kraken into Dusk and Dawn core. Kraken with Dusk is definitely still viable, but you should highly consider trying out the Trinity Force build when playing into enemy comps that are more fighter or tank heavy. For Shyvana's tier list placement, since she has seen a nice spike in power from the changes this patch, we're going to give her a significant push up into the OP tier. As noted during the pre-patch tier list, we were a bit skeptical as to how the Storm Raider edition would influence Hecarim, and he's definitely not liking the rune right now. Storm Raider's Hecarim players are having a really difficult time so far, while Conqueror Hecarim is performing much better. At the time of making this video, about 70% of Hecarim players are running Storm Raiders though, so that is really affecting how his stat line is looking in 26.9. Right now, because of how bad Storm Raiders is, Hecarim is sitting down around a 48% win rate. The good news though is that Conqueror Heck players are winning up around 50%, so if you're swapping away from Storm Raiders, then he's really not that bad. As a result, we will be keeping Hecarim in the jungle A tier. If you're going Storm Raiders though, then he is a B tier caliber champion. So for the jungle tier list in 26.9, we have a new look to the OP tier with Warwick and Shyvana sliding up to join Nocturne. The changes that Udyr received for this patch have turned out to be incredibly impactful, as AD Bruiser Udyr builds are back on the menu. Riot changed a bunch of his AD ratios around and gave his Q some health scaling, so it's in turn made a Spear of Shojin into Sundered Sky core extremely powerful. As a matter of fact, AD Bruiser Udyr builds are now outperforming AP Bruiser. However, AP builds are still completely viable too, so this just makes Udyr a massively versatile champion now, since you can adapt your build based on each game very well. As a result of the buffs landing Udyr in a great spot, we'll be moving him up into the S tier for 26.9. Most AD Assassin junglers are really good with Voltaic Cyclosword right now, as Kayn, Naafiri, Rengar, Zed, and Talon should all be running the item. Kayn and Naafiri in specific are the two who are outperforming in this patch, so we've got both of them up in the S tier. For Kayn, it's not Voltaic with full-out lethality that is working best though. Voltaic with Black Cleaver and Death's Dance is the core leading to the best results for Kayn, so just going Voltaic into Bruiser with Red Kayn is super powerful. The one other more notable build that has popped up for jungle this patch is AP Xin Zhao. The complete optimal setup has yet to be discovered, as there are two builds winning at around the same rate. There's the Shiv Rush into Dusk and Dawn 2nd and Riftmaker 3rd, or the Dusk and Dawn Rush into Nashor 2nd and Riftmaker 3rd. From the testing we've done, it is actually looking like Shiv may just be the better setup. You can see here that Shiv is going to be dealing slightly more damage from a standard auto attack, and then we can also see that with a full combo, that static Shiv wins out again because of its passive proc. Nashor's does offer up 15 haste though, which is something Shiv doesn't have, while Nashor's also provides more attack speed, so there could be a world where Nashor's is more optimal if you're playing into a tankier comp. Into a tankier team where you will need a longer fight to win win out, going for Nashers so that your abilities come back off cooldown quicker and so that you're attacking faster is something to consider. So overall, AP is now a legit way to play Xin Zhao for this patch. However, AD is still very strong too, so he's in a great spot and is up in the jungle S tier. So one of the biggest winners from the mid lane in 26.9 has been Nefiri, as she's loving the changes to Voltaic's Cyclosword. Not only has Voltaic become stronger, but Hail of Blades also offers up damage on its procs now, so the overall burst potential of Nefiri has gone up a ton relative to last patch. Even Deathfire Touch is something that has been finding great success on Nefiri, winning at about the same rate as Hail of Blades. Deathfire is really interesting on Nefiri because with the Deathfire proc combined with Scorch, your poke power from Q is nuts early on in lane. If you can hit both Q charges, then you're able to chunk the enemy out super hard. There is a world where Rune Page could be matchup specific to where if you are against a ranged mid or a more difficult melee lane where you just want more early poke damage from Q, that's where taking Deathfire over Hail of Blades would make sense. Deathfire could just be most optimal for all games though, and it's kind of too early to tell, so experiment with both pages and see what you like. Here's a look at the complete build and rune setup that you should be taking as you're rushing Voltaic into either Axiom Arc or Edge of Night second, while Serylda's and Edge of Night are both viable third options. So Nefiri is definitely in a very powerful spot after all these changes, and she's being moved into that mid lane OP tier to reflect that. So Vlad is another mid laner in need of a push up the tier list for this patch, as he has benefited a bunch from two specific changes. First is that Vlad loves Deathfire Touch, especially due to the fact that Storm Raider's Surge has landed in a relatively weak state. Both Aerie and Deathfire are outperforming Surge, but Deathfire does just look like the most optimal pickup out of the three. We'll have to see if this changes at all with these Deathfire hotfix nerfs, but we don't think the nerfs will be enough to do so. The second change that Vlad has been loving is the addition of the new boots, Gluttonous Greaves. These boots are perfect for Vlad because they provide Omnivamp, and then when you get the upgraded version for completing your mid lane quest, you get even more healing. So Vlad is turned into one of the better mid lane champs that you can play for 26.9, as we'll be promoting him up into the S tier. If you guys watched our pre-patch tier list, we highlighted how we thought the Voltaic Cyclosword changes would be extremely positive for Zed, and it turns out we were correct in that assumption. Zed mid lane has been popping off with a Voltaic Rush this patch and is up around a 51% win rate. This just never happens for Zed. If he ever even comes close to sniffing a 50% win rate in a solo queue, then Riot either nerfs him or nerfs the items he's using, so if you're a Zed player, then take advantage while you can. The new boots Gluttonous Greaves are also performing super well on Zed, winning about 5% more than Lucidity boots, and this win rate is skewed a bit by the fact that it's likely more so one-trick Zed players who are taking the boots, but at the same time, a 5% gap is too massive to only put the blame on one-tricks abusing it. So Gluttonous Greaves with Voltaic Cyclosword is providing Zed with a really powerful early to mid-game spike, and because of this, we are giving Zed a big push up into the OP tier for mid-patch. So if we have a look at the mid-lane tier list, the OP tier sees a shakeup for this patch with Zed and Nefiri joining Xerath. So what we're seeing so far in regards to how the item and rune changes have affected mid-lane is that champs who can abuse Deathfire Touch and Voltaic Cyclosword the best are winning out. We covered all the Deathfire users at the very start of the video, but to reiterate, Vlad, Anivia, Malzahar, Brand, Victor, and Aurelion Sol are all S tier champs right now with their ability to abuse Deathfire Touch. Other than Zed, a few other mid laners who you should be looking to try out Voltaic on for this patch include Uxin, Kiana, and Talon. Uxin has a really interesting new build where he goes Electrocute for the Keystone and rushes Voltaic, so you almost play him more like an assassin in 26.9. Static Shiv is absolutely terrible on Uxin now, but about 16% of Uxin players are still building the item, so definitely swap over to Voltaic Rush if you haven't already. Champs who liked Phased Rush in previous patches aren't performing nearly as well with Storm Raiders Surge in 26.9. For instance, Ryze players taking Storm Raiders are only winning 47% of the time, but Deathfire Touch Ryze users are up at 51%. This is definitely due in part to the fact that you would likely take Deathfire in easiest matchups, but at the same time, the general outlook with Storm Raiders across the board is that it's in a weaker state relative to other Keystone runes. Orianna is another example of a mid who ran Phase Rush at a pretty high rate, but is underperforming heavily with Storm Raiders, as Ori players taking the rune have an abysmal 45% win rate. So one of the more fascinating setups that has come out of bot lane in 26.9 that we did already feature in our OP builds video a few days ago consists of Deathfire Touch Smolder. Deathfire is just really good value on Smolder because he can constantly be proccing the rune in fights with his low cooldown Q, and he's going to easily benefit from the bonus damage, where once you have been burning enemies for up to 3 seconds, the damage from Deathfire gets increased by 75%. There's also a really broken interaction with Black Cleaver on Smolder, where Deathfire Touch's burn damage is going to stack Black Cleaver. So by applying the burn from Deathfire Touch, you can instantly stack up Black Cleaver's passive, and this is making the item an optimal second purchase on Smolder now. So here's a look at the optimal build and rune setup for the champion, as you are rushing Essence Reaver into Black Cleaver second and Spirit of Shojin third, while DFT is the Keystone rune. As a result of Smolder overperforming with this new setup, we will be moving him into the OP tier for 26.9. Another ADC gaining in relative power for this patch because of the item changes is Samira. Not much of a surprise here, but Samira is absolutely loving the new Omnivamp boots. Omnivamp on Samira is super powerful, as it's going to help her out massively when she's getting those R's off in team fights. The rest of the build does not change at all for Samira, as you still want the Collector into Infinity Edge as your core, but make sure to grab Gluttonous Greaves as your staple boots purchase, unless of course the enemy team is just full AD or full AP, to where SteelCapped or Merc's value is just too huge. For Samira's tier list placement, you will find her up in the S tier as one of the best ADCs for the patch. There's a new build going around on Kalista right now that has still yet to be picked up at a high rate, but all things are pointing towards Shiv being Kalista's most optimal rush item. The reason Shiv has so much potential on Kalista is because her E gets applied to all enemies when she procs the energized effect. So if you're skirmishing in a grouped up fight, then once your Shiv proc goes off, you can immediately use your E to get a multi-man slow off. Kalista's E does have an AP ratio as well, so you definitely aren't wasting the AP that Shiv now provides. As a matter of fact, the AP ratio on Kalista E was buffed towards the end of last season, going from 20 to 65%, so it was a pretty huge buff. As a result, a hybrid setup of Shiv into Rageblade, where you get a nice mix of AP, AD, and attack speed, is what's working best for Kalista in 26.9. So due to its limited amount of play so far, it's tough to get a super accurate read on whether the build is actually making Kalista a good pick for solo queue, but we do think that if you're running the build, it makes her better than a C tier pick, so we'll be moving Kalista into the B tier. So for ADC in 26.9, there hasn't been as much of a meta shift as some of the other roles. Jinx and Ashe continue to remain two of the best traditional ADCs, while Smolder is the one outlier who has really benefited from the item changes. Mages who can abuse Deathfire Touch are just way overtuned for bot lane in 26.9. Brand in specific is completely insane right now, and although we generally don't like to do this, we have to move Brand into the OP tier. Even his play rate is up above 2% as a bot lane carry, so more players have been picking him up, while his win rate sits elevated up over 54%. Seraphine is absolutely nuts now too, because there was an under the radar bug fix buff that Riot gave her to where her Q used to not deal damage to enemies walking towards the center of the effect, but that has now been fixed. So if you really want some free elo from bot in this patch, then Brand or Seraphine are completely disgusting relative to traditional ADCs. In regards to the new starting item that Riot introduced called Doran's Bow, it does look to be overrated on the majority of ADCs. The one outlier we are seeing so far though is Kog'Maw. An ADC like Kog'Maw, who is more reliant on weaving autos to win out in early trades, is really liking the item since it provides 15% attack speed. Cog W is how he's going to trade early in lane, so if that 15% attack speed allows you to weave in just one extra W auto into your trade, that can be a huge difference maker. The Zeri mini rework has turned out to be quite negative for her. We showed you guys in the pre-patch tier list how she was losing a ton of damage on her Q and W, and it turns out that the extra movement speed she gets from R is nowhere near enough to compensate for the loss in damage. As a result, Zeri is now one of the weakest ADCs on the patch, and she's being placed in the C tier. Going into the patch, a lot of players were pretty excited to try Kai'Sa with Shiv and Ezreal with AP builds, but that was definitely way overhyped. Kai'Sa is not even performing that well with Shiv at all, as Kraken Rush still wins more, while Ezreal continues to win more by going Endless Hunger as his third item, as opposed to an AP pickup like Horizon Focus or Archangel's Staff. So despite both champions being two of the higher played ADCs of the patch, we've got them rated down in the B tier as weaker picks. So not only is Smolder loving the Deathfire Touch with Black Cleaver tech, but there's a support who can abuse it as well, and it's Senna. So Senna support was already a champion who really liked Black Cleaver, and because the burn damage from DFT stacks the Cleaver passive, you just get even more value out of Black Cleaver on Senna by pairing it with Deathfire Touch. The best second item on Senna is Static Shiv, and this has really good synergy as well. Since the reworked version of Shiv is going to apply on-hit effects to the targets hit by the Chain Lightning effect, this means that when you proc the passive, you're going to spread the Black Cleaver shred onto multiple targets at once. You don't gain all 5 stacks though, it's just going to be 1 stack. However, you do get the full 5 stacks insta when you use Q on the main target because of Deathfire Touch. So if you're taking Deathfire Touch and are running the Black Cleaver rush, then we think Senna is a lot better than her overall win rate may suggest, as we're placing her in the S tier for 26.9. So this probably doesn't end up lasting for very long, but Seraphine is now the most OP support in the game after her 26.9 bug fix changes. Q has now become a lot more reliable to hit, and in turn, it's led to her win rate increasing by around 1%. 1% may not seem like a big deal, but when the champ was already in a strong spot last patch, sitting above a 51.5% win rate, a 1% boost pushes her past all other supports in win rate. It's not just the win rate that's elevated either, as Seraphine has seen a big spike in play rate for this patch too, and when a champ sees both their play rate and win rate spike in the same patch, it's generally a very good good indicator of a buff being extremely impactful. We'd be pretty shocked if Riot didn't issue some sort of a nerf in 26.10 to Seraphine, so her time in the OP tier is likely short-lived. Other than Seraphine becoming stronger, Brand support is now back in a really powerful spot due to Deathfire Touch being added to the game, so we're moving him into the S tier. There's nothing else too noteworthy to mention for support in 26.9 because most of the item and rune changes influence the other roles way more significantly. But while lists like these show you what to play, our brand new Season 16 Essentials courses for every role teach you how to win, each designed to walk you through every stage of the game from start to finish. From the exact trading and recall timers you need to win lane, to the mid-game macro decisions 99% of players get completely wrong, all the way to the team fighting tips and tricks challengers abuse to always deal the highest damage possible. Whether you're a top laner in the most unfavorable matchup possible, a mid laner having to deal with everybody in your lane 24/7, a jungler trying to balance ganking with farming, an ADC stuck trying to hard carry with a support who just exists to grief you, or a support that's struggling to carry games on your own. Our Essentials courses are tailor-made to focus on the exact concepts that actually matter for climbing on your role in your elo. Check them out today, completely risk-free, using the link in the pinned comment or description below, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions, you get every penny back. So there you have it, everyone, the biggest meta-shifting patch that we've seen all season long, which has been a really nice change in pace. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.